Hello and welcome to this episode of Essex by the Sea. I'm Owen Ward, exploring the Essex coast, finding out about the amazing and interesting stories it has to offer. Don't forget, Essex by the Sea is now available on your smart speakers. Just tell it to play Essex by the Sea podcast. And thank you very much for all the feedback you've given about the podcast as well. Do love hearing what you think and what you'd like me to feature on a future episode. Got an idea? Just let me know. You can get in touch via social media. Now, Essex has a long tradition of sailing vessels, the traditional ships with those reddish-brown coloured sails and more modern craft as well. Well, my guest for this episode clearly has a passion for taking pictures of these magnificent boats because they've recently won an award. Sandy Miller joins me now on Essex by the Sea.
Hello, Owen.
Congratulations on the award. Just explain what you've actually won, please, Sandy.
The National Historic Ships Organisation run a photo competition every year. And within the competition, there are 2 or 3 different awards. So there's the Classic Boat Award, there's the People's Choice Award, which obviously is voted for by followers of National Historic Ships on their Instagram feed. And new this year, there was a Newcomers Award. And then there's the main overall winner, and I won the Classic Boat Award, which is sponsored by Classic Boat magazine, and yeah, I was delighted.
Now, obviously, this is a podcast, so we can't see the picture, but can you describe the winning image for us and sort of what the image was of?
Yep, it's got a peaceful image. It was taken in September of last year, 2020. In the morning, I was out on my kayak off West Mersea, and there are smacks. You were talking earlier on of about the old traditional boats that we have around on our estuaries and our coastline, and what they call the smacks are what used to be the boats used to dredge oysters and fish for sprats, and there was salvage work, various different things. They were the workhorses of the day. There were lots of them, and there are a line of several moored off West Mersea, and this one was called the Ethel Alice, together with some other boats. As the sun was coming through the mist on a still morning, it was a rather lovely moment. So I think it made quite a nice sort of peaceful photograph.
And why do you think this picture won the award? I mean, what did the judges have to say about it?
The editor said that he liked the reflection. He thought that there'd been some good planning gone into it to get such still water and good conditions for that type of shot. And yeah, I think it's not it's a fairly simple idea of a picture with, when the sun comes through the mist in the autumn, it's an absolute delight. It's not a very complicated scene to analyse. It's just quite appealing.
One of the comments I saw was about how calm the water was, and I was a few weeks ago out on the River Blackwater, and it was like a mill pond. It was as flat as a pancake, and that's what you captured in that image. And you mentioned there about planning. Was there much planning, or was there an element of luck in there?
Oh, there's always lots of luck. It's one of those things where you can plan and plan and plan, and it never goes to plan. But on that particular morning, I do pay a lot of attention to weather forecasts and try and get a good idea of which way the wind's coming from, where the weather fronts or whatever coming from, and guess as much as I can. But there is an awful lot of luck, and that was lucky that morning. There was big fog banks around that just held off me, and then the mist stayed in the right place and the sun came through it at the right time. You can't plan all of that. All you can do is hope to get the conditions on your side and give yourself the best chance, especially in a kayak, because the Blackwater can get quite choppy, and there are strong tides, especially off West Mersea. So you need to pay attention to where the tide's going to be, where the wind's going to be, and try and get everything on your side, really.
I was going to ask you, but you've kind of already answered it for me in that what was you on to take the photo, but you was in just a kayak. Does that make it harder to take the pictures because, as you say, in slightly rougher waters, you're moving and bobbing around. Possibly the subject you're trying to take a picture of is moving as well. That must be quite difficult then for a photographer to capture that moment.
Yeah, it's got real pros and cons, actually. It can be fantastic because you can be quite maneuverable, and also, you're not on a big boat, so you're not very threatening to other boats, so you can get in quite close. And in a sense, it's you who's going to come off worst if you get it wrong and get hit. So I mean, it's up to me to be careful. And although it does have its advantages because you can get into some quite good positions, but the disadvantages are as soon as it gets a bit choppy, it really can be quite tricky. I mean, trying to keep yourself upright and hold the camera at the same time, can sometimes be a bit tricky. And also, obviously, because you haven't got much speed, the boats they whip past you and they're gone, in seconds. So you have to try and get yourself into a good position and then just make the most of that brief little moment as they come past. So it can be great, and I love it, and it's a great way to be out on the water. But it's not always perfect for taking pictures.
And I imagine actually when as you say, some of the bigger boats that will whiz past if it's quite a breezy day, and you, as you say, get yourself into the right sort of position. You hope that you're in the right place for the right light and the conditions and the framing of it, and you press the button to take that picture. It must be very rewarding when you then see that image and go, yes, I got it, because I guess in some cases you only have one chance of getting it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is. It is rewarding. I'm sure that these things more often don't go right. So when something does go right, it's you tend to be quite pleased anyway. I mean, the amount of times you line up for a picture and then the boat tacks, or I don't know, a cloud comes over the sun. There are so many things that can go wrong. We were talking earlier on about luck. I mean, there's so much luck involved. You can do everything you can to get yourself into the right position, and then you just have to cross your fingers, really. So when the picture comes off, I mean, you're pleased, obviously.
Where did the passion come from for taking photos then in the first place for you?
I used to live in the mountains in the French Alps, and although I always had I messed about with it before that, sort of on an on and off basis. I kind of had this feeling that there was something in me that wanted to do that, but I didn't really explore it very seriously. I sort of picked up cameras. My dad was a very good photographer. He ran a magazine and he did his own photography work at Marconi. And I kind of sort of badgered him a little bit here and there, and he lent me a camera, and I did a bit on and off. And then I kind of got more serious about it when I was in the mountains, and I was really inspired by the mountains for it, and got very passionate about it and very serious about it. And then when I came back to England in 2008, I started taking pictures of the estuary and trying to get the different moods, the lovely light you can get over the Blackwater. It can be fantastic. You get all these different moods and different seasons. The light's always different. You get the reflections of the water. You know what water's like. It can be really magical when you get interesting light. And I started to discover these boats, which, to be honest, I didn't know a great deal about at all. I mean, I was talking about my dad. He was a passionate sailor, and it's something that I've just never really taken much notice of as I was growing up. And I started to take a real interest in these smacks and the barges and the boats that you see on the Blackwater and other estuaries as well, the Orwell and the Stour. And it's really taken me over, actually. I love these smacks. I love seeing them. I've taken a real interest in the history. It's kind of a fascinating part of our heritage. I mean, I'm sure you probably know far more about it than I do, doing what you do. But if you read up about the Cone and Tollsbury and Mersea with their history of fishing, it's fascinating, and they are beautiful, beautiful craft. So seeing them race in the local regattas, or if you're lucky enough to come across one when you're out in the kayak, or I try and work out where I might see them and then just turn up on the off chance, that sort of thing. And occasionally you get pictures and occasionally you don't, but it's they're really beautiful things to see.
And there's so much work that goes into restoring these, because in some cases these vessels are over 100 years old. Some of them, they're very old vessels, and of course need constant maintenance. And it's surprising really how many of them are still around and still on the water, sailing around the Essex coast, isn't it?
It's fascinating. It really is. The amount of work and well, I think you have to sort of acknowledge expense that goes into it is jaw-dropping, really. I mean, it's great because you get to see these boats restored, and you have to take your hat off to the amount of work and investment that goes into it. It's a fascinating subject too, because there are all sorts of questions of should they be restored to look as they did in the old days when they were working, or because they're used now largely for sort of cruising, pleasure, leisure, racing. Should there be rules? Should people be able to do what they want? I got very, very interested in reading up about it and finding out about how people go about it and the boat builders and how they do their work and that sort of thing. It's a sort of, well, it's a very, very interesting subject if you ever want to have a look at it.
It certainly is, and we could talk all day perhaps on that. But let's return back to your photography. I was looking through your website before recording this episode, and one part of it caught my eye, called bark art. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? Well, it was just a project. You sort of, I don't know. I think at one point I was scratching my head a bit about something that I could do locally without going too far, just be able to wander off into the woods and really get involved in a project that I could do on. I mean, I've got woods virtually on my doorstep here, and I love wood, and I was looking at a way of sort of trying to do more of close-ups of wood. Really, I suppose that's where it came from, and so I sort of went. It was. A lot of it was done over the winter, really, just going and peering at trees. It sounds a bit of an odd thing to do. I'm sure people must have thought I was completely around the bend. But if you get up close and you look at the bark, it's quite fascinating. The different shapes and colours, and you can while away quite a few interesting hours doing it. It was an interesting project to do. I really enjoyed it.
And some fascinating and brilliant pictures that have come out of it. I guess then taking that sort of close-up images, it's very different to the landscapes of the mountains that you described in earlier, and the estuary shots that you take that are much more panoramic and sort of wide view, as it were.
Absolutely. It's I suppose in a sense when you're in the mountains or taking an estuary shot, you are kind of distilling a feeling of what you see into a 2x3 two-dimensional image. It is a process of trying to compress everything that you see and feel into your box that you've got in front of you, and that's not very different in that whether you're looking at a big landscape or a tree. I suppose you're trying to assess what you feel, how you react to something, and how that might translate into a picture, whether it's something you want to recreate. What does it make you feel? It's all similar sort of approach to how you would go about taking a photograph, and the way I like to sort of see my photography is to try and photograph what I feel. So if I feel something for a boat, or the way a boat moves, or the response that it creates in me, that I think is where the beauty of photography lies, in trying to recreate that into a photograph. So if I get a feeling of some sort out of a piece of bark, or a tree is showing me, then yes, it's not a landscape, but it's the process is actually probably very similar. At least it is to me. I don't know how other people would approach it.
Back to your award-winning picture as we come to the end of this episode of Essex by the Sea. Where can people actually see it? Is it on display anywhere on your website?
Probably the best thing is to go to the National Historic Ships website. They have a section for their photography competition with all the shortlisted entries, all the different award winners. They also have it on their Instagram feed, which is well worth keeping an eye on. There's a lot of interesting stuff that comes out of the National Historic Ships feeds. They've got various projects that focus around keeping going traditional skills and helping young people come into that sort of thing as a career. It's quite interesting stuff. So well worth having a look at. And I will get my picture up onto my Instagram feed.
Well, Sandy, I very much look forward to seeing more of the images that you capture around the Essex coast in the months and years to come. Time's beaten us, sadly, for this episode, but thank you ever so much for joining me. Fascinating to hear how you managed to capture the magic of the Essex coast through the lens of your camera. So thanks very much for joining me.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Don't forget, you can follow Essex by the Sea on social media. Check out Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. So until next time, thanks very much for listening.